Just put a bit of water in and boil it.
Your grandfather probably ate these 30 brain dishes without blinking an eye, but mention them today and watch people turn green. From Depression-era lunch counters to church basement potlucks, animal brains were once as common on American tables as hamburgers are now. If your family ever served brain dishes and you remember them, hit that like button and let us know in the comments which ones you tried. Breaded brains. Milanese Italian-American mothers discovered that anything properly breaded and fried golden would disappear from children's plates faster than ice cream on summer afternoons, even brains cleverly disguised as familiar veal cutlets. This ingenious technique turned the most challenging ingredient into something that looked familiar enough for picky eaters to try without resistance, complaints, or dramatic protests that could disrupt family dinner harmony. The preparation began with the freshest veal or pork brains available, cleaned thoroughly and sliced into cutlet-sized pieces that would cook evenly, without some portions becoming overcooked while others remained underdone. These slices had to be uniform thickness and completely dry to ensure the breading would stick properly during the frying process that would create the golden, crispy coating children loved. The breading station followed classic Italian technique passed down through generations: seasoned flour, beaten eggs, and fine dry breadcrumbs arranged in shallow dishes for efficient assembly line preparation that could handle multiple cutlets quickly. Each brain slice was dredged carefully through flour, dipped thoroughly in beaten egg, and coated completely with golden breadcrumbs that would create the perfect crispy coating during frying. The key was using enough good olive oil to properly fry the breaded brains without making them greasy as old rags or soggy as wet newspaper. The oil had to reach exactly the right temperature to create immediate sizzling, but not so hot that the coating burned black before the inside heated through to creamy perfection that made this dish memorable. Brain and potato hash. When hog-killing day produced more organs than any family could possibly eat, fresh, smart farm wives knew exactly how to stretch these valuable ingredients into satisfying meals that fed everyone without wasting a single scrap. Brain and potato hash used the reliable cast-iron skillet to transform surplus and scraps into hearty comfort food that stuck to hungry ribs and provided lasting satisfaction through long days of physical farm labor. The hash began with potatoes peeled and diced, small enough to cook evenly in the well-seasoned cast-iron pan that had faithfully served the family for decades through countless meals. These carefully cut potatoes went into bacon grease first, browning slowly over controlled heat until they developed perfectly crispy edges and creamy centers that would provide substantial foundation for the finished dish. While potatoes cooked to golden perfection, cleaned pork brains were crumbled into uniform small pieces and seasoned simply with salt and pepper that enhanced rather than masked their naturally mild flavor. The pieces had to be exactly the right size to cook evenly when added to the hash, preventing some from overcooking into tough bits, while others remained raw and unappetizing. When potatoes reached ideal tenderness with beautiful golden brown edges that promised perfect crispiness, the seasoned, crumbled brains went into the same pan for just enough cooking to warm through and set slightly. They needed minimal heat to add rich protein and satisfying substance to the potato base without becoming tough, rubbery, or grainy from overcooking. Onions, carefully diced and cooked until translucent and sweet, added welcome complexity and pleasing texture that made the simple hash much more interesting than plain potatoes and brains. Some families included colorful bell peppers from their kitchen gardens when available, creating attractive variety that made the dish more appealing to critical eyes and hesitant appetites. Brains in tomato sauce over rice. The preparation started with canned tomato sauce, enhanced with diced onions, minced garlic, and whatever dried herbs the cook preferred from the spice rack or fresh herbs from the kitchen garden. This flavorful sauce base could simmer gently while other dinner preparations continued, slowly developing the depth of flavor that would perfectly complement the mild brain meat without overwhelming its delicate taste. Rice, cooked separately in lightly salted water, provided the essential starchy foundation that transformed this combination into a complete, filling meal that could satisfy the entire family's hunger. The properly cooked rice absorbed the flavorful tomato sauce while providing substantial bulk that effectively stretched the expensive brain meat to serve everyone generously without anyone leaving the table still hungry. Weeknight presentations were deliberately simple but satisfying. Steaming rice, served in individual bowls and topped generously with the savory brain and tomato mixture, perhaps garnished with fresh chopped parsley or a sprinkle of grated cheese, if the family budget allowed for such small luxuries. The goal was solid nutrition and genuine satisfaction rather than impressive presentation that required extra time or expensive garnishes. This practical dish appeared regularly on dinner tables throughout America during the 1950s and early 1960s, when families were generally more willing to use economical organ meats and much less squeamish about unfamiliar ingredients that provided excellent nutrition at reasonable prices. Community cookbooks routinely treated brain recipes as completely normal family food rather than exotic curiosities that only adventurous cooks would attempt. Brain croquettes with parsley. When sophisticated 1940s hostesses wanted to impress important dinner guests with something elegant and unusual that would generate admiring conversation, perfectly prepared brain croquettes provided the ideal solution. These golden, crispy appetizers transformed the humblest available ingredients into something that looked sophisticated enough for formal company while using economical organ meat that didn't strain entertainment budgets already stretched by wartime rationing and economic uncertainty. The croquette mixture began with thoroughly cooked brains that were mashed completely smooth and carefully combined with thick, rich cream sauce made from butter, flour, and fresh milk or cream. This delicate mixture had to achieve exactly the right consistency, rich and substantial enough to hold together firmly when shaped into neat portions, but not so wet or loose that it wouldn't maintain its proper form during the crucial breading and frying process. Seasonings were kept deliberately elegant but perfectly restrained. Just white pepper for gentle heat, a subtle touch of fresh nutmeg for warmth and complexity, and perhaps some finely chopped fresh chives or parsley for appealing color and bright freshness that would please sophisticated palates accustomed to refined flavors and expert seasoning techniques. The carefully prepared mixture was chilled thoroughly in the icebox until it became firm enough to shape by hand into neat cylinders or elegant ovals with clean, attractive lines. Each individual croquette was then rolled methodically in flour, dipped completely in beaten eggs, and coated evenly with fine golden breadcrumbs that would create the perfect crispy exterior during deep frying. Deep frying required absolutely precise temperature control that separated experienced cooks from nervous beginners. The oil had to be hot enough to create immediate, vigorous bubbling around each delicate croquette, but never so hot that the golden coating burned black before the creamy interior heated through completely to serving temperature. Perfect croquettes emerged from the bubbling oil with beautiful golden brown exteriors that promised satisfying crispness and creamy, warm centers that delivered rich satisfaction in every single bite. The contrast between textures created the kind of sophisticated eating experience that impressed guests and generated compliments that hostesses treasured. Presentation elevated these simple, economical ingredients into something that genuinely looked like expensive restaurant food worthy of special occasions and important celebrations. The finished croquettes were arranged with artistic precision on delicate doilies, garnished tastefully with fresh parsley sprigs, and served with small silver forks that made them easy to handle gracefully during elegant cocktail parties where appearance mattered as much as flavor. Guests bit into these mysterious golden appetizers expecting sophisticated, complex flavors and were never disappointed by the rich, creamy results that satisfied without being too heavy or overwhelming for party food that had to please diverse tastes and dietary preferences while encouraging continued conversation and social interaction. Brains and gravy over biscuits, southern mill towns and farming communities developed their own distinctive version of the beloved biscuits and gravy combination, using readily available organ meat instead of expensive sausage to create a stick-to-your-ribs breakfast that could fuel hard-working men through long, demanding shifts in hot textile mills and tobacco fields where only the strongest workers lasted more than a few seasons. The preparation started with fresh pork brains that were cleaned thoroughly and cut into small, uniform pieces that would cook quickly and evenly in the rich gravy without creating unpleasant texture contrasts. These carefully prepared pieces had to be small enough to distribute evenly throughout the finished gravy, while remaining large enough to provide substantial, satisfying bites of protein that would fuel demanding physical labor. The traditional Southern gravy began with bacon grease, heated in well-seasoned cast-iron skillets until it shimmered like liquid silk across the cooking surface. Flour was whisked in gradually to create a proper roux that would thicken the gravy, while adding the distinctive nutty flavor that made authentic Southern gravy so different from the thin cream sauces used in other regions of the country. Fresh milk, often still warm from the morning milking and rich with natural cream, was added very gradually with constant, vigorous whisking to prevent lumps while creating the rich, creamy base that would carry the tender brain pieces. Brain pieces went into the gently simmering gravy for just long enough to cook through completely without becoming tough as old shoe leather or rubbery as tire treads. Fresh buttermilk biscuits, baked until golden and flaky in the same reliable ovens that had served Southern families for generations, provided the essential foundation for this hearty breakfast that could sustain grueling physical labor for hours. The rich aroma of brain gravy bubbling in seasoned cast-iron skillets created eager anticipation that made early morning rising seem worthwhile despite the physical demands that lay ahead. Brain dumplings in broth. German and Austrian immigrants brought the time-honored tradition of delicate brain dumplings to American prairie farms, where they became an elegant Sunday soup course that honored cherished Old World customs, while successfully adapting to New World ingredients and challenging conditions that tested immigrant determination, creativity, and cultural preservation instincts. The dumpling mixture required careful combination of finely ground cooked brains with fresh breadcrumbs, beaten eggs, and just enough flour to create a workable dough that would hold together reliably during the cooking process. Traditional seasonings followed authentic German patterns that had been passed down carefully through multiple generations. Fine salt, white pepper for gentle heat, freshly grated nutmeg for warmth and complexity, and perhaps some finely chopped fresh parsley for appealing color and bright freshness that would please American-born children who might otherwise resist unfamiliar Old World flavors. The prepared dumplings were shaped carefully by experienced hands into perfectly uniform walnut-sized balls that would cook evenly in gently simmering beef or chicken broth. Clear, well-seasoned broth was absolutely essential for this dish's success and authentic flavor profile. The dumplings were added to gently simmering broth and cooked just until they floated to the surface. indicating they were done. Prairie families served brain dumpling soup as the first course of Sunday dinner, honoring German traditions while adapting to American meal patterns that differed from European customs. The soup connected families to their European heritage while using ingredients available on American farms where traditional Old World items weren't always obtainable. Pickled calf's brains. Behind every neighborhood delicatessen counter sat a mysterious glass jar that dared customers to try something truly unusual and challenging. Pickled calf's brains floated in cloudy brine like a culinary challenge that separated the adventurous from the squeamish, creating an immediate test of culinary courage for anyone brave enough to point and ask for a sample. The pickling process began with the freshest calf brains available, cleaned meticulously, and poached just until they firmed up enough to slice cleanly without falling apart into useless pieces. These brains had to be absolutely perfect. Any hint of blood or impurity would ruin the entire expensive batch and waste ingredients that couldn't be easily replaced during lean times. The pickling solution combined white vinegar, pure water, coarse salt, and traditional spices like bay leaves, black peppercorns, and sometimes a touch of fresh garlic that would enhance rather than mask the delicate brain flavor. Sliced brains went into sterilized glass jars and were covered completely with the seasoned brine, following proper canning techniques that ensured both safety and quality. Jewish delicatessens particularly specialized in pickled organ meats, including brains, tongues, and other challenging cuts that required skilled preparation and deep cultural knowledge passed down through generations. The brains were served thinly sliced on fresh rye bread with spicy mustard, or chopped fine and mixed into creamy egg salad for customers who wanted to try them without confronting their appearance directly. The pickling process created flavors that were tangy, complex, and surprisingly mild to those brave enough to taste them without preconceived notions. Brains à la Polonaise wartime cookbooks promoted this elegant preparation as an ingenious way to make cheap cuts feel special enough for important company dinners when rationing severely limited ingredient choices and creative cooks had to make do with whatever was available. The brown butter, breadcrumbs, and hard-boiled eggs transformed humble brains into something that looked and tasted like expensive restaurant food worthy of honored guests. The preparation began with perfectly cooked calf or pork brains that were poached until just firm and sliced into neat, uniform portions that would present attractively on good dinner plates. Brown butter was absolutely key to this dish's success and sophistication. Fresh breadcrumbs were toasted in the fragrant brown butter until they turned golden and achieved perfect crispiness, creating textural interest that made the finished dish much more enjoyable to eat. These carefully prepared breadcrumbs absorbed the nutty butter flavors while adding satisfying crunch that contrasted beautifully with the smooth, creamy brain texture. Hard-boiled eggs, chopped fine and mixed with fresh parsley, provided appealing color and additional protein that made the dish more substantial and visually attractive. The presentation looked sophisticated enough for special occasions while using economical ingredients that didn't strain wartime budgets already stretched by rationing and shortages. Brain and mushroom, fricassee. Before frozen dinners and processed convenience foods revolutionized home cooking forever, weeknight suppers often meant practical one-pan meals that combined whatever protein was available with seasonal vegetables and simple seasonings to create something genuinely satisfying. Brain and mushroom fricassee provided exactly that perfect combination in a single reliable skillet that simplified both cooking and cleanup for busy farm wives. The fricassee began with fresh mushrooms, carefully sliced and sautéed until they released their natural moisture and developed beautiful golden brown edges that promised rich, earthy flavors. These mushrooms provided complexity that perfectly complemented the mild brain meat while adding appealing texture and visual interest to the finished dish that made it attractive enough for family dinners. Wild mushrooms gathered from familiar woods and fields made this dish especially special during autumn months, when nature provided abundant free ingredients for families who knew where to look and which varieties were safe. Children learned to identify edible varieties, while mothers taught them which ones would add the best flavors to evening meals that had to stretch tight budgets. Cleaned brain meat was cut into uniform bite-sized pieces and added to the pan with the golden mushrooms. The cooking had to be extremely gentle and brief, just long enough to heat the brains through completely without making them tough as old leather boots or disappointingly rubbery as worn-out tire treads. The secret was perfect timing that came only from years of experience and careful attention to detail that couldn't be learned from cookbooks. Brain meat cooked much faster than most proteins, transforming from perfect tenderness to disappointing toughness in mere seconds of inattention. Farm wives developed reliable instincts about exactly when to remove the pan from heat. A simple cream sauce bound everything together harmoniously, made by adding flour to the flavorful pan drippings, then gradually whisking in rich milk or cream. This sauce captured all the concentrated flavors from the mushrooms and brains, while creating the rich, comforting base that made the dish satisfying enough for hungry working families who needed substantial meals. The cream came directly from the family cow, still warm from morning milking and naturally rich with butterfat that made store-bought dairy taste thin and watery by comparison. This farm-fresh cream created silky textures that transformed simple ingredients into something that felt luxurious, even during the leanest times when money was scarce.